Once again, as we join our special guest for the Indaba program, of course, our feature discussion, Changing Communities Through Culture, with a focus on crime. And again, uh, Dr. Claudius Fergus, Reverend Kwame Kamau, and guest host Dr. Shabaka Kambon and Vanessa Herbert will take you through. Let me say a very good evening to one and all.
Good evening.
Good evening, Ryan. And it's our pleasure to be here. Good evening, listeners.
Absolutely. A very pleasant good evening to one and all. We are your hosts for tonight's premiere edition of Indaba, the place where knowledge grows, the place to find consensus, the voice of the people, the voice of the Emancipation Support Committee. As mentioned before, we are here with Baba, Dr. Claudius Fergus, and Dr. Shabaka Kambon. We'll be joined tonight by a plethora of women. It's Women's Night on Indaba, it seems. We're looking forward to it. We have no problem with women power on Indaba as we discuss the very important issues that are relevant to tonight's discussion. Leading off the discourse on tonight, of course, we have Dr. Claudius Fergus's Africa report dealing with Ghana's Wode Maya's tour of the diaspora. Really looking forward to that as our former co-host is going to be joining us. I'm not going to say her name. I'm going to leave that for Dr. Claudius Fergus to do. Of course, by way of our feature discussion, again, changing communities through culture with a focus on crime. And last but not least, bringing up the rear, so to speak, Dr. Shabaka Kambon is going to take us into our viewpoint for tonight, which is going to be on the issue of Eye on Palestine, the case of genocide brought by South Africa, I love to say Azania, against Israel. So quite a show lined up, but I do want to say a very pleasant good night, a very pleasant good afternoon, and in some cases, a very pleasant good morning, depending on your time zone. And so again, welcome to the premiere edition of Indaba for 2024. And with that, over to you, Dr. Fergus.
Thank you very much, my brother, Reverend Kwame. And again, good evening to my sister, Dr. Shabaka Kambon. It has been a long time since our last edition, but I choose to kickstart the Africa Report for 2024 on a sort of a light note, light and yet deep note, you know, with my favorite, one of my very favorite Pan-Africanists, who is a content maker and, you know, a great ambassador for Africa. And he's becoming a great ambassador for the diaspora as well. So, Rene, bring up that video for me, and we're going to talk a little bit after. In this first edition of the Africa Report for 2024, we recognize the amazing travels of Ghana's Pan-Africanist YouTuber, Wode Maya, who embarked on a tour of the African diaspora in the Americas 6 months ago. He began in Brazil and is now in Jamaica, his final stop. During this time, he has also toured Suriname, Guyana, Trinidad, Tobago, and Barbados. Traditional media embraced him in every one of these places. However, Talk City 91.1 FM must be credited as the first conventional media station in TNT and possibly the Caribbean to showcase Maya's work many years ago. And of course, through this program Indaba. Maya, whose legal name is Berthol Kobe Winkler, is a Pan-Africanist extraordinaire. He believes in the philosophy of Marcus Garvey, Nnamdi Azikiwe, and Kwame Nkrumah that states, "We are Africans, whether we were born in Kumasi, Luanda, Addis Ababa, Sao Paulo, or Kingston." He says that one of his major goals is to connect the dots. We salute him on his journeys. In pursuing his optimistic Africa to the World mission, he has visited numerous countries on the African continent, from Ethiopia to South Africa, from the Gambia to Rwanda. Now he's discovering Africa in the diaspora. Maya's tour of the diaspora is a treasure trove in African diaspora history, African cultural retentions or continuities in spiritual traditions, language, cuisine, family values, agricultural practices, and more. I strongly advise students of the modern African diaspora to look at his videos and feast on this knowledge. I followed Wodemaya from his tour of Brazil, but because of time constraint, we check in on him in Suriname and Trinidad. The highlight of Maya's trip to Suriname was a visit to the Saramaka, one of the Maroon communities deep in the hinterland. It took him several hours by bus and 7 hours by riverboat to reach the village. The Maroons of Suriname rejected slavery. In 1762, they fought the Dutch army aided by British soldiers, after which the Dutch signed a treaty with them to respect their freedom and the lands they occupied. Most of the leaders of the Maroon Wars were of Akan ethnicity from Ghana. Maya was therefore going to see his people in exile.
Huh? This way. That's a jungle, man. It's been more than 6 hours already. Oh my goodness. We made it. And as you can see, you can't even see me, right? It means we arrived late in the evening. It's almost 7 o'clock and we made it to our final destination. So I don't know if you guys can see, they are packing our bags. We stuck at the moment because right behind me there's water, so we can't cross because the boats cannot come in here. And the tour guide is trying to find the exact place that we're supposed to pass, and he's struggling to find it. So we just on top of rocks, we don't know where exactly, waiting for a miracle to happen.
On returning from Saramaka, he had an interview on Suriname TV. Curiously, whereas the interviewer saw the Maroons as quote-unquote other people, Maya embraced them as his people.
Okay, and also you went to the inland, and
Exactly.
and what did you find there? Because you know there's people who have another way of living, traditional way. And what do you think about that?
I don't think they have another way of living. I found Africa in there. I found my home in there. I found the way of living in Africa. I found my culture in there. I found my language in there. I found my people, you know. Coming from the village born and raised in Ghana, it's exactly the same culture that we have. It's exactly the same thing that is happening in the interior, which I felt so happy to be there. I felt so happy to connect with my people to the extent that they were speaking a language that I could understand some of the words, which was amazing. And so in Ghana, we say atu. Here they say adu. We say gidi gidi, you know, like don't be in a hurry. It's exactly the same thing in there. There's so many languages that I could pick that it's my language, because I am from Ghana. I speak Fanti and they were speaking similar language like my own.
Okay, so you can understand much words.
I cannot understand everything, but I could pick words from what they are saying, that this is what you talked about, and I will explain to you. Even I found somebody with the same surname as me, which was crazy. So no one else can tell me anything about them not being Africans. For me, going to the interior was more like going to the real Africa.
In Trinidad, Maya visited another group of Maroons, the Americans. He also went to Belmont to see what is described as the first house built by a formerly enslaved person. He visited the Emancipation Support Committee's office and also chatted with Indaba's former anchor, Sister Vanessa Lillian Herbert, who is here to tell us about her interactions with the great traveler. Okay, so
all right.
welcome back to Indaba, Sister Vanessa. Welcome back. It's so nice to see you.
Thank you so much for
Share
having me.
your experience with meeting Woody Meyer. Tell us about that.
Yes, indeed, I can share a wonderful experience. I learned about Wode Maya coming to Trinidad. I was seeing his travels. I was seeing him in Brazil and Suriname. And then the wonderful news, I remember I shared a text with you and said, Dr. Fergus, Wode Maya is here. And unfortunately, Dr. Fergus was not in the country, but I got wind of, there was a message up on Facebook that said on December 7th, Wode Maya is going to be at the Trinidad All Stars Panyard. It's a meet and greet. I said, oh my goodness, I have to be there. I think it was posted on the 7th, but it actually took place on the 8th, which was my birthday and my sister's birthday. So it was quite, amazing. I got there after my twin sister and my older sister, Judith. And he had seen them on the compound sort of thing and waved to them or whatever. And when he saw me, he said, but Kende was introducing me to him, and he said, but I saw this lady already. And they said, no, this is a twin sister. So once that part of it was, that was a big joke about me having a twin sister and stuff. And I gave him a very big plug for Indaba. I told him we'd been following him since he was in China and his exploits within China, talking about one of the big stories that he did when he was in China was 100% human hair and also artificial hair in the factories. And he has such a wide range of things that he deals with. But he was so approachable. I hugged him. He hugged me back. I mean, he was laughing. Just how natural you see him on his videos. He's that natural, warm, endearing person. I told him, I said, we love you. We love you so much in Trinidad. I said, Dr. Claudius Fergus, when next you come, you'll have to meet Dr. Fergus. I had a gift for him because I had 2 macrame necklaces that I made, one for him and one for his wife, Trudy. So I gave him that, and he put it on around his neck, and he said, I'm never taking it off. Because a little while after, when everything was finished and we finished chatting, his videographers came over and they started to film us. And we had a nice little conversation, and he tricked me, which is what he does very well as a videographer. He tricked me. He said, he said, what would you tell me about Trinidad and Tobago? You tell me about Trinidad and Tobago. So I told him, I said, well, we are multicultural. We follow different things, but we come together to celebrate different festivals. And our biggest thing, one of our biggest festivals would be Emancipation, the celebration of, the Declaration of Emancipation in the Caribbean and different parts of the diaspora. And we created the first Emancipation, public holiday. So he said, okay, that sounds wonderful. And what about a calypso? And Dr. Fergus, he put me on the spot. So I said something like, we know that Wode Maya is a peaceful guy, and he's married to Trudy, and he's not a flirter. He's a gentleman. And
you did an extempo for him.
I did an extempo for him, and he whipped out his camera again, and he was filming me. So at some point it may turn up somewhere in his whole stories about Trinidad and Tobago. But a wonderful, wonderful guy, a really wonderful guy. I made sure that I paid special attention to the 2 young men who were there helping him. They are the ones who upload the videos and so for him. And I think he was leaving the Trinidad All Stars Panyard. A lady who prepares African food, a famous lady who prepares African food somewhere in the East, in Purep, I think it is. And of course, we know that shortly after he started to put up videos, the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago pulled him together and said, "Hey, you have to go to Tobago as well." And I don't know if he actually met him, but he's been leaving
Yes, indeed, indeed,
his
indeed.
stamp where he also met and talked with the Prime Minister of Barbados. So he's very much hands-on, and he has the easy touch. He's very disarming. He doesn't have any airs or whatever. He's like a little brother. He's like a little brother. When you meet him, he's like your little brother, and dressed in the same casual way, and very warm-hearted.
Yes, indeed. And it's amazing how he finds himself in all these nooks and crannies, unearthing the history that we ought to know about. I put on the screen, I didn't talk about it. There was this Maroon in Brazil, in Sao Paulo, who fought the Portuguese Chagrinas. And although he was denounced by the church and all of that, he is revered as a saint in Sao Paulo, even
Sao
today.
Paulo, yes,
So well known, and there's S. Maroon. And to tell you the truth, I did not know this character until Woody Meyer introduced him to the world. And he has been doing that across the diaspora. A lot of our history has been hidden. He has brought a lot of these things to life and give what we know new light and, dynamism and so on. So again, I would plead with people, go and check out his videos. You will learn so much about the region, about the diaspora in Brazil and in the Caribbean, in South America, other South American countries. So please go and check it out. And some other time, again, we'll highlight some little bits and pieces of the great Woody Meyer. So that's it for the Africa Report for this week. If any of the other guests would like to make a brief comment, they're free to do so. But we have a full program on our hands. And thank you very much, Vanessa, for sharing your thoughts with us this evening. So we are back to our program, and the next item on that program, Brother Kamau, I don't have my checklist here, so I would give way to Brother Kwame again. Yes, brother.
Sure. So thank you so much for that, and another scintillating edition of the Africa Report. There, I just want to put a plug for my daughter, Camise and Enya Ndidi, who was also interviewed by Woody Meyer. Her video has gone viral, some 396,000 views. He was surprised that a Trinidadian girl could speak Swahili and Yoruba, as well as that pidgin language. He was just totally blown away. So for those of you who missed that video, go check him out on Facebook. 396,000 views and counting. So big up, shout out, much love to my dear daughter Camise, who also was featured by the legendary Woody Meyer. But we're moving on, of course, now to the next feature, and it has to do with changing communities through culture with a focus on crime. At this point in time, however, before we get into the meat of the feature, we would like to talk about, of course, an experience that has happened most recently in the transitioning of one of our beloved and venerated elders, certainly a friend of the Emancipation Support Committee. And to do so on tonight, I would like to call upon Sister Camille Hunt. If you could please introduce yourself and your organization and talk a little bit about this beloved friend and elder and brother who we would like to memorialize on tonight and pay tribute to on tonight. A very pleasant good night to all of you. And of course, welcome to Indaba.
Good night, everybody. So as you would have heard by now, Mr. Arthur Lewis, he was our head of corporate communications. He passed away on Saturday. I know discussions like these would have been right up his alley because he was very passionate about culture and community building and, providing opportunities for people to advance through culture. So that was his life's work. And he was a part of the East Port of Spain Development Company for 17 years, since the inception of the company, actually. So it really is a loss for the organization. And, we just hope that we can carry on his legacy and continue to do the work that was very important to him. So we just want to say a thank you to Mr. Lewis and condolences to his friends and his family and those who loved him.
Oh, indeed, indeed. At this point in time, in honor of the beloved elder who has now transitioned, we want to take, and with regards to radio time, every minute counts, and so it counts for double when you do it on a program like tonight. But we want to take a moment of silence before we introduce the other guests to recognize this amazing and wonderful life well lived. So at this point in time, we engage a moment of silence for the beloved and venerated elder. Ashe. Ashe.
Ashe.
So at this point in time, we would like to introduce our other guests who are here with us on tonight. One of them is certainly no stranger to the ESE, whether it pertains to workshops, whether it pertains to even the Indaba program in times past, or whether it pertains to other happenings, events. This Queen Mother is very near and dear to our hearts. A beloved, certainly friend of not just the ESC, but the entire Pan-African community. Tonight, we want to welcome Dr. Anna Maria Mora, of course, to the program. A very pleasant good night to you. Yes.
Hi. Night.
Yeah,
Good night.
a very pleasant good night.
No, doctor, I'm not that yet. Anna Maria is fine.
Well, here I am adding accolades to you, perhaps because the work you do is so prolific and so life-changing and transformative. In my mind, you've always had that air. But what one day Congote, as they say in Trinidad and Tobago,
True.
At the side of her is an equally, of course, amazing sister. We want to say a very pleasant good night and welcome to Indaba to Sister Rhonda Clark. A very pleasant good night to you.
Good night, everyone. Happy to be here with you tonight.
Good night. Good night. It's our pleasure to have you.
Yes.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to kick it off to Dr. Fergus. A big topic, and it has to do with the intersectionality of culture and that of crime. To what extent can it mitigate? To what extent can it change? To what extent can it reduce, as it were, the incidents? I'm going to kick the first question to you. We are surrounded by the queens, by the sisters, every which way. But I'm gonna leave it to you to remove the shine from the ball in terms of the first question, Dr. Fergus.
Well, I think that overview should be the first question that we put to the panel. Does culture have a role in reduction or elimination of crime, and how so? And what impact might it even have in terms of facilitating crime? Because it could probably be a two-way stream. We have heard, for example, music could be bad for certain kinds of influences that it brings to bear. But then again, music, of course, could be very transformative in terms of behavior. So I would put the same question to our panelists, and perhaps our elder, Sister Anna Maria Amor, could lead off, because, age and wisdom still associated.
Thank you. Culture it's defined as, it's a very simple definition, the way of life of a people. But then in my training, I learned that culture provides us with prescriptions for behavior and prohibition. So a child is born into a culture. This house in which this child was born is born into a culture, a place where rules and regulations were or are supposed to be set up, and which would help them to understand where they fit in the scheme of things as being a Trinidadian, being a member of this household, the things that they need to do, how they need to speak. And this is what culture is, which is the way of life of a people. But there are prescriptions. It says how to behave and also what not to do. How are we responsible for this space in which we live? And that is the culture we develop. So that culture is very important to, let's say, the formation of a society, and whether society is formed for the good of its citizens, or whether we have issues like criminal activity. I mean, my thing is that we did have let's say, I don't know if you all would have remembered that there were junior set schools where children had like 7 hours a day free without supervision. Many of them, they had no supervision, and they had to, parents were either at work and they had to look after themselves. There was no guidance as to how are you to deal with your free or your leisure time. How should you deal with your free time? What can you do to improve you, because you have all this time? Let us have after school programs where they can come and do their homework. They can learn some learn art and music and different things, but there was nothing in place. And if there were that culture of personal social development, I say that I just think that we are suffering from that whole, how many years of free time that young people had and grew up in without any guidance. And culture can be building or it can break down. And if we say that culture prescribes for us the behaviors we are supposed to exhibit in this home into which we were born, that would have some influence on the society when we come out of the doors of this home, and it prohibits, it tells us what not to do, what destroys, and what we need to do to build this home. And many young people are unsupervised. Parents are working. My issue too is with a lot of young people having children that they are not prepared for. They have children, and these children are not looked after. They have to bring themselves up, or they are brought up by grandparents. So culture does have an effect on our society, and and how we manage the society. Culture has an effect on that. Yes.
Okay, so let me just put a little spin on it before we bring in our other two guests. We could look at culture as national culture, group culture. We are in a multicultural society. And when we talk culture having an impact on this particular issue, we're looking at impact on crime. we are talking about a particular problem here, and we are talking about generalized concept culture. Can we break it down when we talk about culture having an impact? What aspect of culture can we zero in on that we can say could be palliative or some kind of solution to the problem of crime, and which groups are we talking about? Can we be more specific? Can we break it down more specifically? Rhonda, you want to go ahead? Rhonda, you can take
Yes.
it up.
Yes. Good night again, once again. Culture plays a part in the crime situation, and my colleague and myself, we are here to talk about our organization, which is the East Port of Spain Development Company Limited, which has a mandate to do work from the Charlotte Street area across to the Beetham, Sealots area, straight up to the Lady Young. And the programs that we run at this company helps curb the crime or reduce the crime, because we have many various programs. I'm just calling a few: computer repairs. We have spoken word. We have programs in the primary school. So we are catered for persons from a wide range to be instituted or to be taught in various programs, so that they can look for ways or new avenues to become sustainable through economic means and as well as socioeconomic means. We also assist other persons in their family lives, but culture do play a very important part in the crime situation, and hopefully East Port of Spain can help. The programs that we implement can help curb the crime situation.
Okay, before Camille comes in, when we talk about crime, the crime are different echelons of society. So if we're saying that culture impacts crime at one level, can we assume that culture can also impact crime at the upper echelon of society? Because we know those two things are connected, that people are not simply committing crime. You know, there's a consensus that there's an element driving criminality that almost immune to any aspect of law enforcement and so on. So how do you really broaden that discussion? Yes, your organization is doing valuable work, but there is an element that that organization will not touch, and that is perhaps offsetting what you might be doing. So how do you really address all of those elements if you are really to be effective in a sort of a more permanent kind of way? Because what you do today might be undone tomorrow. So Camille, could you address some of that?
Okay, so just on the issue of culture, I just want to raise the point that we do have a program going on right now that uses culture to sort of, get youth involved, to get youth learning about their history. And, we are in East Port of Spain, we are known as the culture capital and the birthplace of steel pan and carnival. So we try to incorporate that culture into our outreach activities to the youth of East Port of Spain. And tying that into how does this address crime? I just want to give a real life example. We know of the issues in East Port of Spain with borderlines where, some persons from one community might be afraid to go into another community. What we see happening in our programs, especially this Candule program, which uses culture as a form of outreach, we get people from various communities across East Port of Spain. They come into the program despite those borderline issues. These are people who ordinarily would not interact with each other. And they come into these programs and they communicate with each other and they share and they support each other. And I think, the importance of that can't be understated, because it is helping in some form to break down those borderline barriers and get these communities to work together. That is one example I can think of where, our cultural outreach actually is showing some kind of impact in, the crime situation. um, I wanna make it clear that the East Port of Spain Development Company, we are not trying to replace the police. We are not trying to do the police's job. We are trying to reach out to the youth before it even gets to the point of having to get the police involved. That's what we do. So I think in that regard, we are a very proactive organization that tries to curb the problem of crime before it begins. I don't know
Okay,
if
Sister Ashley, you want to chip in?
Yes, I think that's an excellent notion. I think that's in a sense, and that is also, if I may, what Anne Maria was saying, in a sense that if culture is the our values and our belief systems and the way in which we learn to interact with people and with our neighbors and how we treat with people and how we treat with hurt and pain and all of those things, if that is what our culture is, then in fact, if we work at strengthening that, then we're doing what our two young sisters say they're doing, which is that we are acting in a proactive way to ensure that our young people don't find themselves outside of, how shall I say, outside of what are considered the norms of the society, and find themselves at the worst end of the criminal elements in the society. But of course, we're dealing now with just we're looking at it in a very small and it's okay to do that at a very micro level. We're not treating with it at the larger level, which is at the wider level, whether or not the society is able to respond and make those cultures values the norm, because obviously they can't. Because if the society was able to make those rich cultural values, even as small as they are, that you're working at the micro level, if they were able to take that and make it the norm, we wouldn't have the problems we face now. The fact is, they have not been able to transfer those values and beliefs that our elders had, that our grandparents had, about simple things like looking out for someone. If someone has fallen on the ground, while you're walking by, would you stop and look out for them? Or do you see that as an opportunity to take what's in their pockets? You know, a simple thing like that. I mean, but it's the values that we've lost with our culture. And then if we examined what culture was in terms, as Anna was asking us to do, in terms of these values and beliefs and so on, that become the norm in a society. So what has happened in Trinidad and Tobago now in terms of culture is that we have several norms. And our young sisters here are trying to bring some norms back into being in some small way, which is fantastic, because we've got to each hold on to a little end. I like to say that that working with communities and so on, everybody has to do their part. And it's like, to use a woman's example, it's like putting the sheet on the bed. If when you help getting your children to learn to cover the sheet, you say, grab that end. And everybody is responsible for some end of that sheet and getting it tucked under the mattress. Am I right? Yes. And you teach the children to do that, to grab their end and carefully manage it. Now, if we all do that, so these two young sisters have taken one end of the sheet, so to speak, and they're trying to battle with that and make sure it's properly tucked under. What's happening in the rest of the corners of the sheet? That's my little
one of the things
I think we would, Kwame, you can lead off and wrap up with your questions. I'm sure you have a load of questions.
I think Anna Maria wanted to intervene.
Absolutely. So I'll allow our senior elders to go ahead, and when you're through, I'll wrap up. So last word to you, senior elders, with regards to this very thought-provoking question.
No, I work with young people. I've worked with them for years. And I realized when I was sent to Arima Senior Comprehensive at the time as a guidance officer, I realized and I knew that teenagers, it's very, very difficult for teenagers to share how they feel with their parents, even with teachers, because they feel judged. Teenagers always feel that we are judging them because they do not belong to where we belong. So I did a poetry competition among the whole school. And this was a 14-year-old, and this child changed my whole view of young people. And that is what sent me abroad to study, to do counseling psychology. I did an ME and MEd. And this, among some other children who supported what she said. She wrote about people because I write poetry. I like poetry. I encourage young people to write because they cannot express how they feel. We feel that young people shouldn't feel, so we don't teach them feeling words. And this is what she said, 14 years old. People are not what they pretend to be. They hide their true feelings for no one else to see. They pretend to feel what they don't so that no one will really know the real them. People want to be loved but are afraid of being rejected. Their hearts scream out to be needed by someone, but they keep it inside so no one knows what they feel or want. They live in their own dreams, pretending to be happy when they are not. They hide from what reality is. They accept everything else but theirs. They live the lives of others. People don't know what true happiness means, so I guess people just don't like being people, it seems. This was a 14-year-old, and I met this theme throughout my journeys working at Barataria Senior Com, Arima Senior Com, with my standard 6 children at Sacred Heart. The theme that we are hypocrites, adults are hypocrites. This is how one young lady put it when we were in a room talking. You all are such a hypocrites. So these are some things that we have to get over with our young people if we are to. Yes, we could teach them to use their hands, but we have to be able to teach them to interact, vocalize how they feel, and work with them to, I tell my young people, your parents have a past, you have a future. Some parents don't like me for that, but what can I say? I say you have a past, your children have a future, and I could work with that future. So my supervisor, when I had started years ago in guidance, called me in and told me, I have to work with parents. You must work with parents. I said, okay, ma'am. And then I left and went abroad after that. Anyway, no, because it really is extremely, extremely difficult to get young people to be. When I went to Barataria, because those schools were built by the World Bank, and you had to have a counseling room. The counseling room was put next to the principal's office. What madness is that? Mm-hmm. And I told them, no, not at all. I am not going in that office. You'll have to put me as far away as possible from this principal's office. And then the children started, Miss, I hope you're not going in that staff room, Then them teachers that talk me business in that staff room. So they didn't want to see me in the staff room at all. So I was put very, very far from where the principal's office and the staff room and stuff was. We have to be able to get young people to, interact. Parents on their own beat, many parents have children that they're not ready for, they don't really want. So that, it's a problem. But we have to work with what we have.
Thank you.
Okay, that's it for me.
Thank you very much, Anna Maria.
As we try to sum up, one of the words that is coming to my mind is that of actually it's a phrase, agents of social control. And so, whether the agent of social control here, the way of life, the cultural norms that we are trying to prescribe or we are trying to use as a prohibition tool per the guidance of the elders. We have a number of agencies within not just Trinidad and Tobago, but the Caribbean and the world over. Those that are listening, tuned in the African continent. By the way, you can chime in, you can interact. Indaba is a very interactive program. So please feel free to drop your comments, your questions. We'll see them, we'll interact, we'll interrogate, we'll navigate the comment section so that you can be very involved in this process. So whether you're a parent, whether you are operating as a school, whether you're operating perhaps within the spiritual sphere, whether you are a radio disc jockey or radio host or co-host, whether you're operating through the lens of perhaps someone operating in the cultural space or any other space, these are all potential agents of control. One of the big questions that we cannot answer on tonight because we are out of time having a third segment is this: to what extent do these sundry agents of control agree in terms of which way is up? Because we often find that what is played on the radio station is undermining, and of course, I'm not talking about Talk City 91.1, just to make the record straight and clear. But sometimes what's played on the radio station undermines what's going on in the East Port of Spain Development Company. Sometimes what's said in one corner within a cultural space totally erodes and eviscerates what's going on in the other space. And so, as adults within a society and people within a society in general, the question that we have to ask ourselves locally, nationally, regionally, and internationally is: which way is up? What set of values are we going to embrace in a multicultural society that is becoming liberalized by the day? Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? To each his own. These are questions that we are going to have to tease out perhaps in another edition of Indaba. But I want to thank our guests for coming out on tonight and for participating in the whole discourse as it relates to culture and the way with which it intersects with crime, whether to aid or put another way, whether to help or to hinder, whether to add to or to take away from. That being said, we now want to move into another
Kwame, perhaps we can wrap up by giving each of the guests 1 minute to address which way is up. I think that might be a good way to.
Yes, especially our two young ladies who didn't get a chance to tell us more.
They didn't get a chance just now. So,
with your permission, with your permission, I would absolutely go in that direction, sensitive to our producers and our timeline as we are speeding to the top of the hour.
That's
1
okay.
minute each. Which way is up? Starting with Sister Rhonda, and then we'll conclude with Sister Camille. Sister Rhonda, which way is up in a multicultural, increasingly liberalized society? There are people pulling us in all different directions. Which way is up in your experience?
In our experience, in my experience, working in East Port of Spain, I would say working together. All of us can work together, band together, and help get the work done, help get everything done, and more hearts and lives and souls being touched. Keep it simple, keep it short.
Oh, beautiful. Well, yeah, I thank you for that, Sister Camille. The pressure is on. She did it short and sweet. I don't know how you're going to do it, but, you feel free. Have at it.
Okay, I just want to close by saying thank you for having us on. And there are organizations out there that are doing the work, trying to play our part in addressing the crime situation. The East Port of Spain Development Company is one of those organizations. So we encourage people, if you are from the East Port of Spain area, to reach out to us. We have, resources available. We can guide you in the right direction. If you don't have academic qualifications, you feel like there's no route for you to take, we are here to support you. People can reach out to us on social media, East Port of Spain Development Company on all platforms. And yeah, that's it. Just reach out to us and we will guide you and see how best we can support you.
So
Okay, and we leave with one of the comments of our listeners out there, Bongo Grease, who asked us to focus on traditional culture in order to revive our cultural values in all ways, in our thoughts and our behavior. So that's something that we can end the program, this segment of the program with. Thank you very much, Bongo.
Thank you.
And thanks to our guests. Thank you very much. And of course, we'll see you again. Huh? We definitely will invite you again. Thank you. Yes,
So
Kwame.
without further ado, we are to the point of the culmination, as it were, of our program, and our last discussion has to do, and it's courtesy of Viewpoint. It's Eye on Palestine, and here to talk about it, we have a very dear mother of ours, certainly a mother of mine. I will dare not say Sister Asha. For me, it's Queen Mother Asha. So please forgive me when I say that. But it's part of the cultural norms that I was raised in, that I have to call a S and a spade when I see it. So we are dealing with this big issue of Eye on Palestine, the case that was brought, of course, to the ICJ, courtesy Azania, aka South Africa, against Israel. You're going to take us through a 3-part series. How do you wish to commence this megalith of a discourse?
Yeah.
It's pretty huge. Have at it on tonight. And again,
okay.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much for that stirring introduction. Let me begin by something that was said in the last segment, which is Anna Maria Mora said, young people look at us and look at the adults as just hypocrites. And actually, the world right now is seeing what that statement of hypocrites and hypocritical behavior really means. Because we are watching live without any cover on our eyes. We are watching genocide take place against a group of people. And there are spin doctors all around us who are saying, hey, this is nothing. What are you talking about? Hospitals are being bombed? No, nothing like that is happening. Are schools being totally destroyed? Universities being blown up to smithereens? No such thing is happening. Has 90%, 70%, 80% of the housing infrastructure been destroyed? Oh, no, not at all. Not at all. So I don't know how young people are watching this and what are they saying about this world that they are going to inherit, when in fact you have such, absolute hypocrisy from the highest corners, of the globe. So I felt, listen, this is such an amazing teaching moment for all of us. Our young people, when we were growing up, we read a little bit about, and maybe we protested, depending on our age, about apartheid in South Africa. So we had a sense of what apartheid was. We remembered when African young women and men decided to burn the passes. Remember, they had to walk with ID cards to get from one village to the next. And any white South African, pardon me, any white South African could have stopped you and said, where's your pass? And you had to produce it. So we understood what apartheid was. But this generation has no idea. They have no idea. But now, because of this amazing hypocrisy that's taking place, they can see on social media these amazing little phones that we've all become attached to. They can see children losing their limbs. They can see people's homes being totally, destroyed. So I think it's an amazing moment to teach. People are now learning, what does settler colonialism really mean and what does it look like? And these are things and issues we've got to explore. And I'm hoping the series Eye on Palestine, we'll get a chance to explore, pardon me, what settler colonialism means. Because, these are things we read about, but do we know? And we think we know, but now we are seeing that, in fact, when a group of people come into your land and decide to clear it for their own use, we can see that happening and taking place in Israel. We can see these Israelites, and now we can learn, the population can learn the difference between Zionism and Judaism. So it is an amazing learning moment. Here we had Germany saying in this process, and I wanted to share a bit more about the case, but time is against us, I understand tonight. But I'm just going to highlight this one point because it's interesting and it connects with Trinidad and Tobago. Germany said, oh, South Africa has taken Israel to the International Criminal, the ICJ, the Court of Justice, the International Court of Justice. Well, we, Germany, will stand in defense of Israel because South Africa's case is no case at all. It's nonsensical. And then what did we learn from that experience? We learned when Namibia, Gingob, their president, by the way, who had been to Trinidad and Tobago quite a number of years ago, had attended one of our trade investment symposia, spoke at one of our Africa forum. We used to have, and we had many Africans from the continent come and share their knowledge about their own country and their culture and history and so on. And he was one of those who told us about the Nama and the Herero people. And here it occurred that once Germany opened their mouth, so to speak, here was Namibia able to jump straight to their defense and say, no. You cannot say that South Africa's case is meaningless because you, Germany, have been involved in the first recognized modern day genocide against the Herero and Nama people. So there's so much to learn. It is such a learning opportunity that I thought, listen, what we can do is try to highlight some of the things that are coming out during this. It's quite a tragedy. What a way to have to learn, because almost, because 2.3 million people have been displaced. What's the number now? Near 30,000 are dead. How many children have lost their lives? How many, mothers have lost their lives? How many people are dead under the rubble? It's a horrible way to have to learn. But if it is that we can teach our young people that this exposes the hypocrites, and there's a lot of unpeeling like an onion. Sorry to give us another women's analysis, but that unpeeling of the onion, we can do that. And if we can do that, then this is an amazing moment. So that's what I'd like to use this moment to do, to help broaden and deepen the knowledge of our community around issues like settler colonialism, around issues like apartheid, around issues of international law, human rights law, and so on. So that's
yes. So I will just add two quick points. One is, and by the way, if our 91.1 audience is leaving us, thank you so much for sharing the program with us, and we will see you again next week. Look out for the flyer with the themes and the guests who will be on that program next week. Yes, the hypocrisy is obvious, but Sister Asher, the hypocrisy is characteristic of Western imperialism, has been ever since they embarked in the 15th century. It's a way of operating, and it is the same imperialist states that were involved in colonialism that are spearheading this hypocritical movement as such, because they are forcing other countries into a corner to support or probably face the consequences.
Absolutely.
Right. So we have to understand that hypocrisy is part of Western imperialism, which now, of course, is the industrialized capitalist nations of the world. So that point is made. The second thing is that here again, if South Africa had not acted at that level, perhaps we would not be talking about ICJ. So we have to recognize that Africa once again has been bearing the burden of forcing the world to redefine its values. We did it with respect to slavery, slave trading, and all these things.
Human rights.
A lot of those things were in fact the struggle of the African, whether in diaspora or on the continent. We're doing it again. And of course, I know Brother Kwame would want to extend this point because it's his favorite philosophy. Ubuntu is being invoked now on a global level because it is the driving force behind what South Africa is doing. They have articulated that because their philosophy, their national philosophy is Ubuntu. They cannot sit. So the apartheid experience is one, but the philosophy, which is older than apartheid, is also driving this action to ensure that not only international law is recognized, but the human rights of the Palestinian people are secure.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
the whole
It's wonderful, from that point of view, it is such a teaching moment. And for instance, you say that our young people, this is I think when they see Africa being so prominent, South Africa has given us that prominence and has made us the conscience of the world, and we are able to carry that because, as you say, because of our philosophy and because of our value systems. That's why this earlier discussion was important as well. We carry that value system and that culture, and it's because of that we are able to take the lead on this, and we had the right to take the lead on this. And the world can say. I think what is also important is that if we deepen the understanding of our community and the young people in the community, then it acts as a buffer for in case those same forces arrive here at our door, as we know they are going around the world busy now, trying to convince every single country to say, oh, we support Israel instead of South Africa. Or
I'm sure the pressure is already there. Sometimes we never know. So I'm sure the pressure is already on.
That's right. But it's up to us now to make sure that we share that information and knowledge to as wide a cross section of our population as possible, so they would be horrified. They would understand the depth of responsibility we have as people who have suffered under colonialism, whose environment is a history of settler colonialism, to say no, not in my name. And that's why you have even Jewish people in North America jumping up. I heard Bernie Sanders last night for the first time. I mean, he's been saying it. I mean, I heard him, I read of it. But last night I saw him on MSNBC saying what's taking place there and pointing out that he is a child of people who had been experienced the Holocaust.
And some young Jewish movie makers have in fact produced a new documentary called Israelism that is being released and is facing a lot of backlash as well. These are all Jewish people and yet they're being accused of anti-Semitism because
Yes,
once you are going to Israel, you
that's
know,
right.
and
That's
yeah,
right. Yeah,
you
yeah.
are
So it's a very,
anti-Semitic.
yeah, so it
Yeah.
is a moment that and I think one of the backlashes we're seeing is that, for instance, it seems to me, I mean, I haven't gotten to the depths of it yet, but Mexico seems to have been pressured to do one of those spurious things. Imagine, take Hamas to the ICJ. You know, so we're going to see all sorts of games played, but it's important for our population to understand a number of things about this, and I hope we can discuss those things over the next coming weeks, one after the other, so that we fulfill our responsibility of at least sharing the knowledge.
Yes,
Oh,
over to you,
brilliant.
Brother Kwame, and you can bring
Brilliant.
the curtains down for this evening.
Sure, sure. I would be happy to. I want to acknowledge all of the persons in our Facebook feed as well as our YouTube feed on tonight. A very pleasant good night to each and every one of you. Sometimes you are here in another time zone. So for some of you, it's pleasant good morning. I'm seeing some of your comments and I'm so tempted to read them, but I will come afterwards and interact with you in the chat as we extend what we would refer to as Indaba overtime. I will extend it in the chat, I promise. So please wait on me. I'll be there. A couple themes came to the fore: settler colonialism, imperialism, and white supremacy imperialism coming out of Western Europe. As part of tonight's discourse, human rights, international law, the whole issue of Ubuntu, coming from that notion of umuntu, ungumuntu, ungobantu. I am because you are therefore I am. There's a very interesting question that comes up in my mind each and every time, and it has to do with the kind of violence that is foisted not only upon the intended victim, but the kind of violence that is foisted upon one's self and one's own people if you have to act in a way that is contrary to the norms of love and light and logic. It takes an exceedingly great amount of energy, an exceedingly great amount of what Paul would call the searing of the consciousness to act and to behave in a particular way. And what we are seeing as part of this discourse, and I'm hoping that we can tease it as we engage, as it were, the series Eye on Palestine, and I'm hoping that beyond this series Eye on Palestine, that we can also interrogate Eye on the Congo, where there's some genocide taking place there as well, and Sudan and Yemen and other places, as we often do here on Indaba. But as we look into these ethnocides and genocides that are taking place within the world geopolitic experience as it is now, one of the questions plural that arises, that of when you lose your humanity to dehumanize another, to eviscerate another, to destroy another, the cost that is paid, not only in terms of your own consciousness and your own conscience, but when the chickens come home to roost and your own people are affected by your policies, are affected, and innocent people at that, affected by your attempts at putting someone else under the booth, your boot on their neck. When that happens, when you lose your humanity in that way, what is the consequence? What is the cost of such a dehumanization, not only of the intended victim, but the dehumanization of yourself, in order to do that with a straight face and go to bed at night? We seem to be out of time on tonight, but I want to leave the last word to our very honorable and venerated eldress. Your last words, your closing comment for us on tonight, as we dare to look this amazing a juggernaut of a topic in the eye, all puns intended, as we seek to broach it?
Okay, well, just I would say to people, read, look, listen. And that way you can engage the conversation in to enrich yourself, and you'll be able to enrich your family and your friends and your neighbors because you would have learned more. It's also it is such a horrific tragedy. So I want to separate for a moment the knowledge we gain from this experience that we're living through, because we are living through a terrible experience, and we should all recognize that, and that tragedy, we cannot close our eyes to it. We must witness it. We must bear witness. Somebody must bear witness, because we don't want to be the thing like, if there's a tree falling in the forest, and do we hear it? We have to bear witness to it, and we have to be able to articulate. So as much as it pains us, don't turn away your eyes from the television or the social media feed. Be sure that you understand what's taking place there, and read more, because we have to be able, as I say, to witness it. We have to be able to advise our governments how where CARICOM should go, how they should act. We don't want that on our conscience, that we allowed our CARICOM nation states to be bullied in some direction or the other. So the only way we will prevent that is if we understand what's happening. So I that's what I urge people to do. Bear witness to what's happening around you, read and think it through.
There are three comments I would like to highlight in tribute to our listeners and viewers by way of social media. And one of them is coming from Aslin Finn. I'm not sure if this person is out of South Africa, but they say here, indeed, South Africa has historically been the leader of human rights. And I'm sure that they are speaking to the underbelly, they are speaking to the underground movement, because clearly apartheid was not, but the response to apartheid has certainly been exemplary. And South Africa has always been home to many a thought leader in that area, so we agree. Her Royal Highness, a special friend and guest of ours, viewing via YouTube, is saying, I agree with Dr. Asha. It's an opportunity to speak the truth without compromise. They create the dystopia, and we are no longer going to accept lies at present. Powerful words coming out of Burkina Faso there, courtesy this Royal Highness. And we have, of course, a Bongo Greece saying there is a disturbing lack of ethical certainty in our culture. And that is not just a local thing, that's a regional thing, and that is an international thing. Well, as at this time, we are not out of love, we are not out of faith, we are certainly not out of words. But for now, it seems as if we are out of time. I want to thank the illustrious and the very dynamic scholar that is Dr. Claudius Fergus. I look forward to your works. That book that is coming down the pipeline, I would be purchasing not just a copy for myself, but as a gift for a student of mine as well. So I'm looking forward to that, and we look certainly forward to the interview of you with respect to same. I would like to thank, of course, Queen Mother, Dr. Asha, for having the courage to broach this very important topic. You are no stranger to danger, and you take it on with great stride, and we look up to you as the next generation, and we say that clearly there is a certain kind of consistency and continuity. One of the persons in the chat said that you spoke with great integrity. And so I have to concur with them that when you are willing to call an S and a spade, regardless as to what some of the consequences may be, it requires a certain kind of courage, a certain kind of vigor, a certain kind of vim, in order to do that, and we grew 2 inches by way of your presence on tonight. To the YouTube audience and the Facebook audience, again, we thank you. To the Talk City audience, they are no longer live with us, but we do look forward to seeing you all next Wednesday, same time, same place, same channel, so we can discuss all of the issues relevant right here on Indaba, the voice of the people, the voice of the Emancipation Support Committee, and of course, the place where knowledge grows. With that said, over and out for tonight. Take care. Again, good morning, good evening, good night, depending on where you are. Peace and blessings. Hotep.
Good night. Hotep. Good night.